Welcome to the Fallen State. I am Jesse Lee Peterson. Thank you so much for being with me. Tonight we're talking about feminism, Satanism, and abortion. Ooh. I have with me Allie Kellog. She is an archaeologist, right?
I went to school for archaeology.
Oh, okay.
And I'm an educator now.
Educator at the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles. She's also a feminist as spokesperson for the Satanic Temple of Los Angeles. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Were you brought up in a religious environment in your home?
It was divided. My mom is Italian. My mom's side of my family is Italian Roman Catholic. So I grew up, I went for preschool, a Catholic preschool. They started us on the Bible pretty early on there. We went to church, not every Sunday, but some. And my dad is Buddhist, so completely different side of the fence.
What happened that you decided, I don't want to be a Catholic, I'm not a Buddhist, I'm a Satanist?
I think deep down, I always didn't really believe in God. I thought that it was kind of a cop-out for us to assume that our will was up to somebody else and we just had to kind of carry out our life assuming everything would work out. And once I kind of started reading about religions around the world and how similar they are and how different they are, I kind of just didn't really identify with a single one, but I embrace all of them as sort of creations of the human mind throughout history.
And so you're not rejecting religion?
No, that's not what the Satanic Temple does. We're not advocating against any particular religious point. We just want to see a separation of church and state.
So what's appealing about being a Satanist?
For me, we identify with the story of Lucifer in the Bible as sort of a metaphor and an allegory for the work that we do, which is arguing against the separation of church and state. We don't want to see our country become a theocracy, and particularly as a woman, I would like to have autonomy and control over my own body.
You worship Satan?
No, so we are not the Church of Satan. We are a non-theistic religion, so we don't actually believe any metaphysical element or any spiritual element that there is a Satan or there is a God, but again, we honor the metaphor of what Lucifer did in the Bible, which was challenging authority.
So are you guys atheists?
I can't speak for every member of the temple. I think some would identify as atheists, some would be agnostic, some really don't have a stance.
What does Satan believe?
He challenged God's authority, and he probably wasn't happy with the will that God was sending him to do these things like killing people. So I think him and some of the angels got together at some point and went to God and said, why do you have all this power? And our interpretation, at least mine, is that God probably felt threatened having his authority challenged, so he cast Lucifer and those angels out. And that's kind of how we feel. We're outcasts. We feel like we've always been on the fringes of society and never really fit in somewhere, and that certainly stands in politics and ideology.
Do you personally challenge God's authority?
I don't believe in God, so I don't challenge his authority.
Do Satan has authority?
No, because I don't believe in Satan. I don't believe that either actually exists.
And so the other satanic groups, do they believe in Satan?
Some do.
Some do. Do you guys associate with them at all?
Mm-mm.
You don't? I'm not quite understanding. If you don't believe in Satan and you don't challenge his authority,
how are we a religion?
Right.
It's hard when we grow up in a culture that's so heavily circulated around Judeo-Christian beliefs. The idea of having a religion and being a religious person but not having a God to worship or a monotheistic basis doesn't make sense to a lot of people.
Right.
So it's a hard concept to grasp, and even myself sometimes I'm like, well, why did we choose this person? Or this figure as our mascot, but again, it's the story of what he did is it's parallel to what we're doing and the activism that we do at the temple.
Are you pretending to be religious so you can become a religious organization in order to challenge other religions?
We have 7 tenets of the temple. They're just rules, just like the 10 Commandments, and we are religious in the respect that we want to honor and adhere to those throughout our lives.
Do you believe in good and evil? Good or evil?
I think there's gray area in between. I don't think it's so black and white, but I mean, I believe there are good people and bad people.
What's the gray area?
I think that's where the idea of sin comes in. People get lost somewhere along the way in their life, and they're generally cast out. People succumb to drug addiction or theft, things that maybe they had no choice but to fall into those situations. Generally, though, that's seen as sinning, so that would be considered being bad.
Right.
I think that falls into that gray area where people along the way in the path of their life, they kind of lose their path and they might make bad choices, but they can fall back on the path. And I don't personally feel like I need God to do that. When I've had hardship in my life, I never felt like I had to rely on a higher power. I felt like it was always up to me.
So you're able to overcome your own hardships?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you do it?
For me, a lot of us in the temple are creative people. We're artists and musicians. For me, creating art and music has always been a very big, profound part of my life, and healing and recovering from traumatic experiences or pain. Having a community, like any religious group, any society in the world you go to, you're going to see a community. And you see that in the animal kingdom as well. Just having people around you to support you and take care of you, that always helps me.
Do you pray?
Do I pray? No, I meditate, but I don't pray.
And when you meditate, what's the purpose of meditating?
Clear my head to kind of level myself, get control of things like my breathing, my heart rate.
I read that at the Holocaust Museum, you teach children and teenagers about genocide, racism, and social activism. Mm-hmm. The people who hired you, are they aware that you're a Satanist? Mm-hmm. And they still allow you to teach there?
Yeah.
Are you surprised?
No, I mean, what we teach is tolerance.
The Holocaust, was that an evil act or good or a gray area?
Certainly an evil act.
But you don't believe in evil?
Not evil in the biblical sense, but in a bad sense. I believe there's people that are malicious and they have malicious intent and they're selfish and they only have their own interests at heart, and I think that's evil.
You're calling bad evil?
I guess, but I think our definition of evil is probably different. I think you speak from a religious standpoint, from your faith, that evil is something tied to Satan, perhaps, something that is not godly,
right,
not heavenly. For me, the two are a bit synonymous, but I believe they're evil people, but I don't think it has anything to do with God necessarily.
Are you evil or good or gray?
I think I'm a good person.
You're a good person. And what made you good? How is that you're a good person?
I care for others tremendously and go out of my way to do so. And even the work that we do in the temple, we're putting our lives on the line and our reputations on the line to do this.
Right.
And if I was apathetic towards the issues, I would just sit back and hope someone else was doing the good work.
So you teach about racism. Define racism for me.
Hatred towards another race or skin color.
I've never met a person who hate another person just based on color alone. Mm-hmm. Have you?
I have.
You have?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that?
Sure. I was actually a student I had at the museum. We started talking about Black Lives Matters. I was talking about Martin Luther King Jr. and civil rights movements today. And he kind of interrupted me and said that he thought Black Lives Matters was people trying to incite a race war. And that really disturbed me. So I pulled him aside at one point and I kind of just asked him. I didn't challenge his opinions. I just wanted to understand why he felt that way. But my understanding is that he grew up in a household that instilled those ideas into his head.
So I can see that Black Lives Matter is an evil group. They're worse than the KKK. They are trying to stir up a war between the races, a race war. Am I racist?
I don't think you're a racist if you feel that way.
But the white guy, you just said the white guy was a racist, or is a racist for feeling that way?
Well, I don't know if I would call him a racist necessarily because he was so young, and I tried to understand that people that young, and from talking to him, I think he was brought up to have those ideas.
But that's not racism, right? It's just they're hating another group for a judgment that they made about that group. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't make them racist.
Well, I think because he was this one kid I'm talking about, who I think is the closest thing I've really interacted with, where someone you could see even at such a young age. He was really a child, and he had with such fervor these emotions about just when I brought up Black Lives Matters, he got really angry. There were people of color in our group as well, and he started saying these things.
What do you think about how I feel about Black Lives Matter? It's an evil, dirty group, agitator group of people, and they're no different or maybe even worse than the KKK. What do you think about me feeling that way?
Do you really feel that way?
100%.
You do? That they're worse than the KKK?
Yes.
I mean, I feel like I can't comment on that because I'm white. So I feel like that's generally between different ethnic groups and people of different skin colors. So I feel like I can't comment on your feelings and opinions towards an organization around your own ethnicity.
How about if I said that about a white group, would you comment then? If I said the KKK is evil, you know, evil group of white people, would you comment then?
I would agree with you on a personal standpoint, and also because you are not white, there might be, that to me is racism. It's between different ethnic groups and skin colors.
How you come up with this? Where do you come from?
Where do I come from? I'm from LA.
How are you coming up with this?
Just my thoughts.
Oh, did you make this up yourself or did someone teach you this?
No, these are just my thoughts.
So what did this guy do when you pulled him to the side and corrected him? What did he say?
I didn't correct him. I just asked him to explain more why he felt that way.
And then once he explained it, what happened in the end of the conversation?
I directed him back to our group and continued my lesson.
Can black people be racist?
I think everybody can be racist.
Okay. What do you say to a person like me who realized that racism is an illusion and it's made up by people who are liars and they want to control a group of people, like the black race hustlers want to control the white folks in order to gain power and wealth, so they keep black people angry, pretending that racism exists so they can use them to go after the whites so they can gain power and wealth. What would you say to me?
That's an interesting opinion I've never heard before.
You've never heard that?
Mm-mm.
Wow. I'm so sorry to hear that. Will you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes sense?
It does make sense. I see what you're saying.
So most black people that you run into, they believe in racism?
Yes.
And so do you personally believe in racism, or it's because you've heard it so much, you believe it, but it's not your personal belief?
I personally believe that xenophobia, and I certainly think people hate one another because of ignorance towards another skin color.
What is social activism?
Activism by means of using social means like what we do at the temple is a lot of it is media based. A lot of it is we're not just armchair activists sitting behind a computer doing things, making phone calls. We actually go out and get our hands dirty. We do protests. That's what we're known for.
And what do you want?
We want to draw attention to the idea that America is headed towards a theocracy, and there's certainly people in power who want that and are fighting for it. Amazing.
I read on your website that women, Satan, and feminism are closely connected to one another. Can you explain that to me?
Mm-hmm. It's the same thing you look at throughout history. You look at things like Satan and you look at women. The two have been persecuted without real inquiry into why they're persecuted. It's just sort of an assumption. It's something we're told to do, especially in any society that's heavily Judeo-Christian in values. Christianity
has persecuted women, Satan, and feminism?
I'd say so.
So women are close to Satan. They can identify with Satan.
No, I wouldn't say that. I think us in our situation, we don't identify with Satan, but the act that he did in the Bible is something that we're experiencing today, challenging theocracy, challenging authority where there shouldn't be.
So how long have you been a feminist?
Probably ever since I kind of could comprehend what a feminist was or what it meant to be a feminist.
And what is it?
A feminist? Just equal rights. I'm not burning my bra, or I don't hate men, but I believe that there is a huge difference between equal rights. Women don't have access to a lot of the things that men do. We are treated very unfairly in society, culturally, and that's a lot of what our concern is that the church steps in there and has a huge role in that. I think once I could first kind of perceive what that was and those issues, and they started to scare me as a woman, as a U.S. citizen, that particularly men, because of their ideological standpoint, want to control my body and my personal life. That's very frightening to me.
And how do men want to control your body and your personal life?
There's a cultural element where things like our sexuality, basic biological, physiological elements are deemed unclean. There's reproductive
Break that
rights.
down for me first. What do you mean by that? I don't understand what you just said.
Well, in terms of Christianity, Catholicism, you see that the story of Eve, she was sort of the first person who bit from the apple from the tree of knowledge. She was the first one, I suppose, who interacted with Satan. In Orthodox Judaism, women can't pray or oftentimes eat in the same places that the men do. In Islam, women have to cover their bodies. And we have that here in any major Judeo-Christian society. You go to a tribal society somewhere, you'll see the same thing when women are menstruating. They have to go live on the outskirts of the village.
But I don't think you'll find that in America today. In America today, women can do whatever they want.
Not exactly.
Give me something that they can't do in America today.
There's places where you can't get an abortion, or at least not without scrutiny.
But that's because that location has decided not to perform an abortion. But because it's legal to have an abortion in America, you can have an abortion. And you can almost go into any clinic in a hospital and have an abortion.
Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, women don't have access to that everywhere in our country, so they have to rely on really dangerous methods like, falling down a staircase hoping the child is killed because it's...
You don't believe that.
What's that?
You don't believe that.
I've read of situations where women had to induce a termination of a pregnancy because they couldn't get access to an abortion.
But that's ridiculous. They can go anywhere and have an abortion now.
No. Well, I think this was in the late 90s.
Oh, that's not today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about today.
Today?
Women can have an abortion anywhere. And the government pays for it. We pay for it.
How about the waiting period? There's clinics where they force a 72-hour wait period.
Yeah. That's a good thing, though. Why should women have the right to kill an unborn child?
Well, that's one of our core tenets, is we believe that you're subject to your own will. Nobody should be controlling what you do with your body.
But you're not killing your body. You're killing someone else's body.
Mm-hmm. And that begs
Do you have a right over that human being, that person's body, to kill it?
I guess that goes even deeper when what constitutes as a life. When does someone become just a cluster of cells, and when do they become a human being?
The moment of conception.
Mm-hmm.
It's become a life. So I want to know, do you consider it someone else's body that's inside of your body?
I would say so. But
And so what gives you the right to take that person's life?
that's a good point. You have to argue. I think it's ultimately up to the woman to decide, since it's her child. She's the one carrying it to term for 9 months in her body. She should be making the calls. And I'm not advocating abortion in general. I'm not saying that every woman should be getting an abortion if she's not entirely content at that moment with the idea of having a child. But I believe that that's ultimately the woman's decision, and that's what we fight for.
Should the father have a say-so when it comes to aborting a baby?
I think I think he should be involved in the conversation, but he is not carrying the child. He's not part of the biological process other than having inseminated the egg. So if there was something like a seahorse where the male took over pregnancy for a while carrying the baby, that's something different. But human beings, human males, it's a physiological difference. It still frustrates me that men feel that they have an authoritative stance on this, and that because the difference between you and I is...
The women who are making these decisions are feeling the same way. They feel like they're in control, they should make that decision, and the man shouldn't have any say-so about it.
I would agree with that.
But so if you're upset at the men for feeling that way, why would you turn around and do the same thing?
Well, let's say I was pregnant and I wasn't sure if I was ready to have a child, and it was not a planned pregnancy. I would include the father in that conversation. The situation is very specific. You know, if there was some situation where the outcome of that conversation results in us deciding to have a child together, that's great, and you carry the pregnancy to term and you have the child. If you have that conversation, the mother and the father have that conversation, and the mother is feeling like she's just not ready. She's not in a position where she can provide for the child. She's not in a position where she personally feels ready to have a child. I think because she is carrying the child, carrying out the biological aspect of that process, it's up to her to decide what she does with her body.
So if the father says, no, I don't want you to have an abortion, and you said, I want to have this abortion, I don't want a baby, I'm not ready, and he says, you know what, I want my child, I'll take care of it, you don't have to worry about it. Should he have that right to stop you from doing this, as he's willing to take care of that child?
If he loves me enough, he'll stick around until I'm ready.
No, but I'm talking about the baby.
I think it's up to the woman to decide what she does with her body.
But it's his baby. Was it for him, there would be no baby.
Yeah, that definitely is
And
true, but he's not carrying the baby.
The only thing that the woman is doing is carrying the baby. She has no other role. So why not just carry the baby for 9 months?
That's a big responsibility.
Amazing. Were you repulsed at the video of Planned Parenthood selling baby body parts for a profit?
I believe that was debunked.
No, it wasn't.
I believe it was debunked.
No, it wasn't.
Okay. Well, I'll double check that later.
What do you think about that they were doing that?
To my understanding, that wasn't true. That was a smear campaign against Planned Parenthood.
But it wasn't. It was proven to be true. I mean, you saw the women on video, the doctors on video, telling the interviewer what they were doing to the baby body parts.
To my understanding, those were actors, but I think our sources are just different.
Come on, Allie.
If I had known you wanted to talk about this, I would have come more. We could compare sources.
No, we were talking about abortion. You knew we were going to talk about abortion.
Yeah.
But
to my understanding, though, what I came with is that those were debunked as smear campaigns, and a lot of those videos were completely made
Is that
up.
what you want to believe?
That's what I believe.
Let's say that is true, and you knew 100% that it was true, then how would you feel about it?
If it benefits humanity and it's a consensual thing on the mother's part, then I think that's okay.
To sell baby body parts for a profit.
I guess that depends on the decision of the mother and the doctor.
Would Satan be pleased with you?
I don't know, because I don't believe in Satan.
I read that the Satanic Temple currently involved in a lawsuit regarding abortion legislation. Is that true? And tell us about that.
Well, one of the things, our kind of core chapter in Detroit, a lot of the people there, mainly the women involved in that chapter who are the chapter heads, they've been doing some undercover work where they went to abortion clinics, and they found out that they were being given false information, false medical information about the side effects of having an abortion. They were given religious information that was sort of, irrelevant to them because they aren't religious. So the idea of the 72-hour waiting period, the idea that a woman is trying to go into a clinic, not even for an abortion, just for things like a mammogram, and she's harassed by people standing out front, that's very scary. So we, again, believe that women have a right to healthcare access.
But the folks who disagree also has a right to protest.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can tell you numbers of women who have just had abortions because they didn't want to ruin their careers. They thought of themselves first. They were mad at the father for impregnating them or whatever the issues, and they get abortions for those reasons.
That's up to the woman to decide. I have why a woman chooses to get an abortion, I think is nobody's business but the woman herself.
And the father of the baby.
She can obviously include him, but ultimately because the woman is the one who's going to carry the child for 9 months, her body's going to change, her whole entire life is going to change. There's a lot more obligations for a mother than a father, I think, biological and social and cultural. And so ultimately she bears the responsibility, so she gets to call the shots as far as what happens.
So what are you guys doing right now? What do you have going on right now?
We have a number of campaigns. We recently had a protest concerning an organization called ISSTD, who are psychologists who advocate things like, they were responsible for the death of an 8-year-old boy named Jude Mira, who had autism, and they told him that his autism was actually the byproduct of him being molested by Satanists, although there was absolutely no evidence supporting that. So the mother got to a point where she felt hopeless, and she wound up killing her own son. So they advocate these ideas of witch hunting and pseudoscience, and they had a conference 2 or 3 weeks ago in San Francisco, so we went up and protested that. There's, in Arizona, there's a lawsuit between the temple and the state regarding prayer. We have children's books we distribute in Florida. In New Orleans, there's some stuff with repairing potholes in the city. We have socks for Satan, so we give socks to the homeless.
Socks for Satan. Is it possible that you could be deceived and believe that you're doing good, but you're really not?
Absolutely. I think everyone has their own opinion. We're very prideful creatures, human beings, and we all operate on the assumption that we are right. And we have a hard time being told we're wrong, and I'm totally guilty of that.
So do you guys get together and say, hey, we could be wrong about this? Do you correct each other, or you just sing and dance along and don't correct each other?
We sing and dance and don't correct each other. No. I guess it depends. There's certainly, like any group project, if you will, there's going to be disagreements within people.
Right.
So I don't think, we're not a theistic group, so we don't debate those sorts of things. But as far as how to handle issues that really strike with us and that affect us and that we want to see a change in, we kind of collectively choose what those are and how to act on them.
My final question, are there people or groups who protest against you guys?
I don't have a specific name of a group, but it's generally people from a Christian or a Catholic community.
But the only time the Christians fight back is when you guys attack them.
No, we don't attack them. We just sort of hold up a mirror.
Well, I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me.
Was that fun? Did you enjoy that?
I had so much fun.
Yeah.
I keep looking at your mug with your face on it.
You like it?
Yeah, I do.
I'm going to have to get you one.